Don't come to my party. You are no longer my dad. My daughter told me 20 hours to her birthday party that I paid for everything. So I made a call. 10 hours later, I had 97 missed calls. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Chris Palmer from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I never imagined I'd be the one holding my breath, waiting for my own daughter to pick up the phone, wondering if she'd even call me back. It used to be the other way around. When she was 5, she wouldn't sleep unless I sat on the edge of her bed and sang that silly, off-key version of "You Are My Sunshine." She used to laugh so hard she'd snort, then beg me to start over. I raised her alone, you know. Her mother walked out when she was 9, said she wanted a real life, somewhere warmer, freer, with less responsibility. I stayed. I picked up the pieces. Every scraped knee, every science fair, every broken heart. I was the one who showed up. So when her 17th birthday was coming up, I didn't hesitate. She wanted a blowout party. A rooftop venue, soft pastel balloons, catered sushi, a live DJ, custom photo booth. It was her dream, and I paid for every single piece of it. Not just because I could, but because I wanted to. Because that's what dads do. At least, that's what I thought. She started pulling away about 6 months ago, but I didn't take it seriously. I thought it was teenage angst. She'd roll her eyes more often, call me extra when I tried to ask about her day. Started talking about some guy her mom was dating. David, like he was a better version of me. David bought me this necklace, she said once. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. I didn't want to be the insecure father who competed with another man. I figured it was harmless. But I started noticing other things. Like how she stopped saying, "I love you" back. How she wouldn't let me tag her in any photos on social media, even though I was footing the bill for that entire picture-perfect life she was curating. I convinced myself it was a phase, that things would bounce back. So I kept giving. I paid for her designer dress, the makeup artist, even the private car service to bring her and her friends to the party. And when she asked for an extra 1,000 for last-minute touches, I didn't even blink. I wired it that same day. The night before her party, just 20 hours before the whole thing was set to go down, my phone rang. I remember it like it happened in slow motion. I had just finished arranging the final payment for the venue. The sun was already down, casting that soft, orange glow across the hardwood floor in my living room. Her name popped up on my screen, and I smiled like an idiot. "Hey baby," I answered. "You excited?" Her voice was flat. Cold, even. "Yeah, about that," she said. I felt my heart drop before she even continued. "Don't come to the party tomorrow. It's not really your place." I thought I misheard her. "What?" I said, laughing a little, trying to brush it off. "You're joking, right?" She didn't laugh. "No, I don't want you there. You're not my dad." My ears rang. I swear I couldn't hear anything else she said after that. Something about not wanting any drama or confusion, and that it was best if I just didn't show up. "I appreciate everything you did," she said, like I was some caterer she was firing. "But I'd rather David be there instead." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the edge of my bed with the phone in my hand, staring at it like it might offer an explanation, like maybe she'd call back and say it was all a sick joke. But nothing came. No text. No apology. Just silence. I went through every memory I had with her. Her first piano recital, the time she got suspended for shoving a bully who called me poor, the letters she used to write me on Father's Day. "You're my hero," one of them said. I kept it tucked inside my wallet for years. I pulled it out that night, smoothed the edges, and stared at the shaky handwriting. When did I stop being her hero? When did David become dad? The betrayal burned deeper than I thought it would. It wasn't just about the money, though I'd be lying if I said that part didn't sting. I dropped over $25,000 into that party. But it was the principle, the erasure, the way she cut me out of her story like I never mattered. Like I was just a transaction. That's when something shifted inside me. I don't know if it was rage or clarity, maybe both, but I stood up, walked to my desk, and opened the folder where I had every vendor contact listed. Caterers, DJ, venue manager, decor team. I stared at the list, breathing slow, feeling the weight of 20 years of fatherhood pressing against my ribs. Then I made a decision. If I wasn't her father, then I wasn't paying for her fairy tale. I always believed that heartbreak was something reserved for lovers. You brace yourself for it in romantic relationships. You expect disappointment, prepare for letdowns. But no one warns you what it feels like when your child is the one to shatter your chest wide open. I sat there in the dim hush of my living room, the glow of the streetlights spilling through the blinds, tracing stripes across the carpet. My phone lay on the coffee table like it weighed 100 pounds. 17 years of sacrifice, love, and forgiveness, all dismissed in a single sentence. You're not my dad. The words clung to the walls of my house like mildew, refusing to let me breathe. I could still hear her voice, sharp and confident, like she'd been rehearsing it. I wondered if David had been standing right there when she made the call. Did he give her the nod? Did he tell her it was time to cut me out? I couldn't stop thinking about that man. I'd never met him. Her mother's boyfriend, maybe fiancé, I wasn't sure. He'd shown up on the scene barely 2 years ago, but in that short time, he'd become the man of the hour. Her Instagram had photos of them at dinner, at car shows, even matching hoodies that said "Best Dad Ever," with his arms slung around her like she was a trophy. And maybe that's what hurt the most. It wasn't just that she wanted to exclude me from her party. It was that she wanted to replace me entirely. Publicly. Lavishly. Like I'd been nothing more than the training wheels before her real life began. I sat there for hours, flipping through every invoice I'd approved, every deposit I'd made, every ridiculous, overpriced item she had insisted on. A 6-foot floral arch customized party favors with her initials in gold foil. A red carpet entrance with a professional photographer. And I paid for it all. Gladly. Proudly. Like a fool. By the time the clock struck 3 a.m., I'd stopped feeling sad. The grief was gone. What was left was something quieter and sharper, resolve. I had raised her. I had held her hand through night terrors, taught her how to drive, stayed up editing her college essays. I'd been there. And if all of that didn't qualify me to attend the party I paid for, then it also disqualified me from footing the bill. I picked up my laptop, opened the spreadsheet I had used to manage everything, and pulled out the folder with all the vendor contracts. My hands were steady. I wasn't acting out of pettiness or rage. I was acting out of truth. She made a decision, and now I was making mine. The first call I made was to the caterer. Their office opened early, thank God, and I was the first call on the line. Yes, I said calmly. I'm calling to cancel the seafood order for Saturday's event. The payment was made under my name, and I'll need a full refund per the cancellation clause. There was a pause, followed by the standard corporate shock and apologies. We'll process that today, the woman said. Is everything all right? I didn't answer her. I just hung up. One down. I moved on to the balloon artist. Yes, she had hired a balloon artist for a 17-year-old's party, and told them the same thing. Next was the DJ, then the photo booth company, then the makeup artist. With each call, I felt lighter. Not happier, but clearer. Like I was peeling off a layer of skin that had grown too tight. But the big one, the one I saved for last, was the venue. That rooftop space was her crown jewel. A glass-paneled terrace with panoramic city views, string lights, and a built-in sound system. She'd bragged about it for weeks. All the girls at school are gonna freak, she said. No one's ever done a party like this before. I had dropped a deposit that could have covered 3 months' mortgage. And now I was taking it back. When I called the venue manager, I gave them my client ID and explained the situation. I was honest. I'm no longer attending the event, I said. Nor am I supporting it. I'd like the payment reversed immediately. The man on the phone hesitated. Sir, that's very last minute. The event is, I cut him off. Per the contract, cancellation within 24 hours means you keep 25% and return the rest. I'm fine with that. He relented. The process began. The space was officially no longer hers. By noon, everything was undone. Payments revoked, deliveries halted, vendors informed. I sat back on the couch and stared at the silence. No cake, no DJ, no sushi, no lights. Just the echo of what was supposed to be. I didn't smile. I didn't laugh. I just waited. And sure enough, the calls began. First, one missed call. Then two. By the time I checked again, there were 15. Then 32. By the time it hit 60, my heart started pounding. Not with guilt, but with a twisted, anxious anticipation. Would she apologize? Would she scream? I didn't know. I didn't pick up. I let it ring, over and over, until her number blurred into background noise. 97 times she called. 97. The voicemail came next. Her voice was shaking, angry, panicked, full of disbelief. Why are you doing this? She snapped. Do you want to disgrace me? Are you really that selfish? The way she said selfish, like I was the villain in some movie she was narrating, I could have sworn she believed it. That's when I realized she hadn't learned this behavior out of nowhere. Someone had taught her that entitlement. Someone had made her feel like love was transactional, like money was infinite, like fathers were disposable. And I had played right into it for 17 years. My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. This one was quieter. Daddy, please, she whispered. Please don't do this. Everyone's coming. What am I supposed to tell them? I paused. I held the phone to my chest for a second. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Because I knew what I was going to say when I finally called her back. It was a strange kind of silence that filled the house after all the calls stopped. Not peaceful, more like the quiet after a storm, when the trees are still dripping and the air smells like something's been torn open. My phone lay on the coffee table, lit up every few minutes with a new notification, voicemails, texts, even screenshots of Instagram messages from her friends. Why would you do this? WTF happened? Is this a joke? She hadn't told them. Of course not. She couldn't admit the part where she'd cut me off the guest list like I was some drunken uncle instead of the man who raised her. No, she needed them to see me as the villain, cold, unreasonable, heartless. But I wasn't any of those things. I was a father who got pushed 1 inch too far after carrying a mountain on my back for nearly 2 decades. I don't know what I was expecting her to say when I finally answered. Maybe I thought she'd apologize. Maybe I wanted her to beg. But when I picked up the 98th call, the first thing I heard was not remorse. It was rage. What the hell is wrong with you? She snapped. Her voice cracked, frantic. I could hear chatter in the background. People asking questions, music faintly playing. Maybe she was already at the venue, not knowing it had been stripped out from under her. Do you want to disgrace me? You ruined everything. I said nothing at first. I wanted her to fill the space, to unravel herself. I told you not to come, but I didn't say cancel it. Why would you be so selfish? That word again. Selfish. As if I hadn't spent the last 17 years giving until there was nothing left in my tank. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling as I spoke. Calm. Detached. I paid for that venue, I said. Every balloon, every plate of sushi, every candle. I paid for all of it. And last night, you told me I wasn't your father. She started to interrupt, but I didn't let her. You said it clearly, so I acted accordingly. I stopped funding a fantasy I'm not invited to. There was a pause on the other end. The first crack in her voice came next. I didn't mean it like that, she mumbled. I just didn't want any tension. I thought it would be easier if I cut her off. If I disappeared, her breathing changed. I could hear her fighting tears, but I wasn't reaching for sympathy anymore. I had done that too many times before. You made your choice, I said. You chose a man who showed up 2 years ago over the man who's been there your whole life. So go ask your new dad to pay for everything. The silence that followed was long, almost cinematic. And then, finally, I said what had been building inside my chest for hours. You are no longer my daughter. The words came out colder than I intended, but I didn't regret them. I needed her to feel the finality. She gasped. A sharp, small sound like someone getting the wind knocked out of them. You don't mean that, she whispered. You're just mad. I wanted to laugh. Mad. That didn't begin to cover it. I had been broken, discarded, humiliated. And still, somehow, I had taken the high road until now. I mean every word. I told her. This isn't about a party. This is about respect. And you threw that out the window when you disinvited me from something I built. She started crying then. Real sobs. And for a second, just a second, I felt the familiar tug in my chest. That instinct to fix it. To soothe her. To be her father again. But I didn't move. Because love isn't supposed to be a leash. I had followed her for so long, thinking I was guiding her, but I'd only taught her that she could walk all over me without consequence. That ended today. You think you're punishing me, she cried. But all you did was make yourself look bad. Everyone's going to know you ruined your daughter's birthday. I almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly manipulative. Even now, it wasn't about the pain she caused me. It was about the optics, the embarrassment. Then let them know, I said. Let them know I stopped paying for disrespect. Let them know I don't show up where I'm not wanted. She tried again, but I wanted you there. I cut her off one last time. You don't get to rewrite this. I ended the call. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, not from regret, but from the adrenaline of drawing a line in the sand I never thought I'd have to. I had always believed that fatherhood was unconditional, that no matter how far your kids pushed, you stayed. But sometimes love means walking away, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself too. The phone didn't ring again for hours after that. The silence was strange, but peaceful. No more demands. No more guilt. Just the slow hum of consequences rolling into place. I didn't expect the silence to last long, but I was surprised by just how fast the noise came rushing in. By 6 p.m., my phone lit up again, this time with messages from extended family, her mother's cousins, old church friends we hadn't spoken to in years. What the hell happened? One message said. Another read, she's crying on Instagram, man. You couldn't wait until after the party. I didn't respond. I didn't know anyone a press statement. But curiosity got the better of me, and I checked her page. She had gone live. The video was already over, but clips had been saved. Someone had screen recorded a part where she stood outside the venue, her mascara running, surrounded by confused guests. The place was dark. The string lights were off. The staff had locked the doors. My dad did this to me, she said, voice shaking, and she didn't even bother to correct herself. She didn't say my ex-dad, or the man who raised me. No, she made sure everyone knew exactly who to blame. I watched the clip twice, maybe 3 times, my chest burning. There were teenagers in the background filming her. A few girls looked uncomfortable. One asked, "So, are we still doing dinner or?" And she waved them off, muttering something about figuring it out. That should have been enough. That humiliation should have satisfied the part of me that felt discarded. But it didn't. All it did was remind me how good she was at shifting the narrative. That same skill her mother had. The ability to be the victim in every room, even when they lit the match themselves. She had learned well. And now, I was cast as the villain in a story where I'd once been the hero. My sister called next. Lisa, always the peacemaker. What the hell, Marcus? She asked. No hello, no build-up. You canceled her whole party? I didn't flinch. She told me I wasn't her father anymore, I said. She uninvited me from something I paid for. What was I supposed to do? Show up and clap from the sidewalk? Lisa sighed, long and disappointed. She's 17. She says dumb things. That's what teenagers do. I nearly laughed. Dumb things? Lisa, she replaced me. She wanted some man she barely knows to stand where I was supposed to be. I wasn't just uninvited. I was erased. Silence. For a moment, I thought she'd hang up. But then she said something that stuck with me. You're right to be hurt. But you didn't just teach her a lesson. You lit a fuse. I knew she was right. The fallout had already begun. Her mother texted next, not to apologize or explain, but to accuse. You've always wanted control. Now you've humiliated her to prove a point. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Control? That's what this was about. It wasn't about power. It was about worth. About being treated like I mattered. I had no interest in controlling a child who didn't want me in her life. But I wasn't going to finance a performance where I got no credit, no respect, and no seat at the table. I spent the next day ignoring the chaos, letting it play out. There were group texts I didn't reply to. Gossip threads I refused to scroll through. I stayed off social media entirely. But the weight sat on my shoulders like soaked fabric. Every text, every whisper, every sideways glance I imagined would come the next time I stepped into a family barbecue or bumped into one of her classmates' parents at the grocery store. Was it pride? Maybe. But it was also principle. I'd built a life around being dependable, solid, the guy who showed up even when it hurt. And she took that and weaponized it against me. That evening, she called again. I didn't answer. Then she texted, one sentence. "Can we talk, please?" I stared at it for an hour. Finally, I called her back. Her voice was different this time. Softer. Measured. "So what now?" she asked. "You just cut me off? Like I'm not your kid." I paused. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there and let the silence take over again. My hands were steady. My breath even. There was no satisfaction in hurting her, but there was power in finally protecting myself. For the first time in years, I felt like I had chosen me. And no matter what storm came after, I was ready to stand in it. The days after the party felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. I couldn't open my phone without some passive-aggressive jab sliding into my messages. People I hadn't heard from in years suddenly decided they were moral authorities. "She's just a kid. You embarrassed her on purpose. You know she'll never forgive you, right?" The thing that stuck with me the most was how easy it was for everyone to act like they knew what happened. Like all of them had front row seats to every sleepless night, every parent-teacher conference, every time I scraped together money I didn't have so she wouldn't feel the absence of a mother. Not one of them had been there when she sobbed in my arms at 9 years old because her mom missed another birthday. But now, suddenly, they were all experts. Funny how people only seem to remember the explosion, not the years of sparks leading up to it. At work, I caught coworkers whispering when I walked by. One of them, Sean, a guy I'd known for years, came right out and asked, "So, did you really cancel her party mid-event?" His tone wasn't even cruel. It was fascinated, like I'd just pulled off some social heist. "She said you humiliated her," he added, almost hesitantly, as if offering her side out of obligation. I didn't flinch. She told me I wasn't her father. So I stopped acting like one. He blinked. "Damn," he muttered. "Cold." I didn't correct him. Let them think it was cold. Nobody talks about how sometimes warmth gets you burned. But not everyone saw it that way. That Friday, I got a visit from someone I hadn't expected. Chris, the father of one of her old friends. He showed up at my place unannounced. We'd bonded years ago over our daughter's shared love of robotics, and while we hadn't talked much since they drifted apart, there was a mutual respect between us. "Mind if I come in?" he asked. I nodded. He stepped into the living room, looked around, and then sat down across from me. "I saw the video," he said, "and I just wanted to say, I get it." Those 3 words hit harder than I expected. I looked at him, skeptical. "You do?" He nodded. "My oldest pulled something similar when she turned 16. Different context, same message. You're not enough." Took me years to stop blaming myself. I stared at the floor, trying to process what it meant to hear that from someone else. He continued. "We raise them, love them, sacrifice. Then someone shiny and new comes along, and suddenly we're the bad guy for having boundaries." He paused, then leaned forward. "I don't think you were wrong, Marcus. I think you were finally honest. It took everything in me not to break down in that moment. Not because I needed validation, but because I didn't realize how much I'd needed someone to say it out loud. That I wasn't crazy. That this wasn't some emotional overreaction. That I wasn't the only father who'd ever been punished for being constant." I nodded slowly, the lump in my throat thickening. "I never thought it would come to this," I said. "She was my world. And now she's a stranger with my last name." Chris was quiet for a beat. "She'll come around," he said eventually. "But not soon. Not because she misses the money. Because one day she'll need someone who stayed." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But hope felt like a trap I wasn't ready to walk into again. I had spent too long being the safety net, the backup plan, the dependable ghost. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took out the old photo album from the top of my closet, the one I used to keep under her bed when she was little. I flipped through each page slowly, careful not to let the corners bend. There she was at 4, covered in cake. At 8, holding a world's best dad mug. At 12, standing proudly next to her science fair volcano. And then it stopped. The last photo was from 2 years ago. After that, she started curating her life without me in the frame. No more photos together. No more shout-outs. Just me, behind the camera, fading into the background. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But instead, I closed the album, slid it back into its box, and put it away, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. Holding on to those images felt like trying to breathe life into a version of her that no longer existed. I wasn't burying the memories. I was finally acknowledging their weight. The next morning, I got a text from her. Short, cold. Thanks for ruining my life. Hope it was worth it. I stared at it for a while, then deleted it. No response. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because some messages aren't meant to be answered. They're just echoes of pain someone hasn't processed yet. I knew then that the goodbye wasn't temporary. Not this time. The door might crack open again someday, but for now, it was closed. And for the first time in years, I wasn't holding the handle, begging to be let back in. There's a kind of silence that doesn't ache. It just settles. It doesn't scream or echo. It just is. That's what my house felt like a week after everything fell apart. The quiet had stopped feeling like punishment. It had started to feel like peace. No buzzing phone. No guilt loop voicemails. No one pacing my mind like they had rented space in it. For the first time in years, I could hear my own thoughts without editing them to be gentle, without biting them back for the sake of not being too much. The world kept spinning, of course. Emails came in, bills needed paying. The same familiar routine played out day after day. But I moved through it differently. Lighter. Not happy, not quite, but free. Every morning, I made coffee and sat on the porch, watching the sky wake up. The birds chirped like they always had, but I noticed them more now. The small things that used to get drowned out by the constant hum of emotional labor, I started collecting them. The way my neighbor's dog barked exactly twice when the mailman showed up. The wind chimes from the house, 3 doors down. The rustle of leaves that sounded like applause on breezy days. These details had always been there. I'd just been too busy chasing validation to notice. She didn't reach out again. Not after that last message. And I didn't expect her to. The girl who once called me daddy with stars in her eyes was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone who measured love by attention, money, and applause. Maybe that was my fault. Maybe I raised her too gently, shielded her too much, gave so freely that she mistook love for convenience. I asked myself that question more times than I could count. Did I create the very thing that hurt me? But reflection isn't blame. It's acknowledgement. And I was done blaming myself for someone else's choices. I didn't know anyone penance for demanding respect. One afternoon, I ran into her old piano teacher, Miss Ellen, at the grocery store. She looked at me kindly, her eyes already filled with the gossip she'd clearly heard. I always thought you were such a good father, she said, reaching for a can of tomatoes. I smiled, politely, but didn't say much. Kids don't always see it at first, she added softly. But time has a way of peeling back pride. I thanked her, not because I needed the reassurance, but because it reminded me that love doesn't always need to be loud to be real. Sometimes it's just showing up, day after day, until the silence tells you it's time to stop. The hardest part wasn't the backlash or the gossip or even the tears. The hardest part was the letting go. The small, invisible release of dreams I didn't even realize I'd been holding on to. Her college graduation, walking her down the aisle, being called for help when her car broke down. I had pictured myself in all those future memories. And now, I was erasing myself from them, frame by frame. Not because I wanted to, but because staying in her life as an emotional doormat would have only taught her the worst kind of love, the kind that bends until it breaks. One night, I took the old voicemail she left, the one where she said, "Daddy, please," and played it one last time. Not out of cruelty, not to torture myself, but to remember what it sounded like when there was still a part of her that needed me. I listened to the way her voice cracked, the tremble in it, the way her pride hadn't yet finished sealing her off. Then I deleted it, not because I wanted to forget her, but because I needed to forgive myself, for staying too long, for giving too much, for believing love alone could raise a child into gratitude. I didn't post about it. I didn't call a family meeting. I didn't burn her photos or trash her belongings. I just moved forward. Quietly. Firmly. I started hiking again. Rejoined my old book club. Repainted the guest room. Things that seemed small, but made me feel like a man again, not just a father. And that's the truth no one tells you. Fatherhood doesn't end with distance. It just changes shape. I will always love the girl I raised. I will always hope she finds her way back to decency. But I don't owe her access to me if she can't respect me. That's not cruelty. That's self-preservation. They'll keep talking, I'm sure. The relatives who think I went too far. The friends who whisper behind closed doors. But they weren't there. They didn't hear the words. You're not my dad. And they certainly didn't watch me erase 20 years of sacrifice with one exhausted breath. I let go, not out of spite, not to win, but because I couldn't keep breathing in a house where love came with a receipt. If you've ever been made to feel disposable by someone you gave your whole heart to, you're not alone. This story isn't just about a father and daughter. It's about the pain of being replaced and the courage it takes to draw a line. If this hit home, drop a comment below. Did he go too far, or was it the only move left? Let's talk about what love really costs when respect isn't part of the equation. See you soon in the next story.